Have you ever found yourself at a complete loss for words when talking to a woman whose mood suddenly shifts like the weather? One moment, she's warm and open, the next, distant or even sharp in a way that feels like it cuts through you. You wonder, what just happened? Did I say something wrong? Or am I simply missing something about who she really is beneath the surface? That uncomfortable silence after a conversation goes sideways, that feeling of walking on eggshells. There's more going on there than just words. There's a deep current running underneath, one that often remains invisible but shapes everything between you two. This isn't about decoding some mysterious, female mind trope or following tired dating advice. It's about something far more profound, understanding the hidden parts of her psyche that influence how she speaks, reacts, and relates to others. It's about seeing beyond the masks we all wear and recognizing how shadow aspects, the parts of ourselves we try to hide or deny, play a vital role in communication, especially when emotions run high. Imagine a close friend named Anna from Brooklyn. She once told me about an intense argument with her sister during Thanksgiving dinner. The tension escalated quickly over what seemed like a minor disagreement about holiday plans, but afterwards Anna felt drained and confused by her sister's coldness. "It was like I didn't even know who she was," Anna said. One moment, laughter, the next, walls. This story might sound familiar. Many have experienced those sudden shifts in someone we care about but don't quite understand. What Anna didn't realize then was that her sister had been wrestling internally with feelings she hadn't fully faced herself. That coldness was actually a protective shield stemming from unacknowledged fears and vulnerabilities, a part of her shadow self showing up unexpectedly. And when it comes to meaningful relationships, those shadow moments are where most miscommunication lives. You might ask, what is this shadow, anyway? Think of it as the hidden room in everyone's house, a space filled with traits, impulses, memories, and feelings we don't usually invite guests to see. Sometimes it holds fears like rejection or anger, sometimes shame or confusion, other times creativity or strength we haven't acknowledged yet. But because it's hidden, it acts behind the scenes in our behavior and reactions. When trying to communicate effectively with someone, especially a woman who might have been socialized to keep certain feelings out of sight, the shadow can show up as sudden defensiveness, withdrawal, or even unexpected hostility. It's not just being difficult or moody, it's an unconscious self-protection mechanism triggered by something deeper inside. Let me share something I learned from working with Maya, a 29-year-old graphic designer from Portland who struggled with conflict in her romantic relationships. Maya often found herself upset when her partner asked questions she perceived as too probing or critical. One day she told me, "I feel like I'm this fragile vase that could shatter if touched wrong." Digging deeper, Maya realized those feelings came from childhood experiences where she learned that expressing certain emotions wasn't safe. Her shadow had locked away vulnerability behind mistrust and fear. Here's where things get interesting. If you want to speak effectively with someone like Maya, or anyone whose shadow side surfaces, you can't just stick to surface-level exchanges or logic alone. It requires recognizing when that shadow is influencing the interaction and responding not by pushing harder but by allowing space for what feels raw underneath. Here's a simple exercise you can try next time you notice someone withdrawing or reacting sharply during conversation. First, pause your urge to fix things immediately with explanations or reassurances. Instead, gently acknowledge that something might be stirring beneath their words, even if they haven't named it explicitly. Try saying something like, "I sense there's more going on here than what we're saying right now. I'm here whenever you want to share it." Notice how giving this kind of permission invites safety rather than pressure. This approach taps into what Jung described about individuation, not as an abstract spiritual goal but as becoming more real with ourselves and others by accepting all parts of our being, even those hard-to-face shadows. Another practical step is tuning into your own discomfort when conversations become tense. It can be a mirror reflecting your own shadow triggers too. So instead of recoiling from silence or anger coming from her side, or yours, lean into curiosity. What am I feeling right now? What stories am I telling myself about this situation? This mindfulness opens doors for compassion rather than judgment on both sides. You see, speaking with her isn't just about better communication techniques. It becomes an invitation for mutual exploration of hidden layers where real connection happens, beyond polite chatter or conflict avoidance. And yes, I know that sounds idealistic at first glance, and maybe even exhausting. But think back to a moment recently where you felt truly heard in conversation. That rare instant when words fell away because presence itself spoke volumes. Moments like those don't happen by chance. They come from willingness to face shadows together without fleeing them. If this resonates so far, that the key lies not in silencing difficult emotions but embracing them carefully. You're already on an unusual path many never dare take. Oh, and if you're curious about diving deeper into understanding these dynamics, the push-pull dance of light and dark and human connection, subscribe to the channel where we unpack these ideas gently but honestly each week. Now let me take this further because understanding shadow sides isn't just philosophical fluff. It radically changes how we interact daily. Think again about Anna's sister at Thanksgiving. She wasn't angry at Anna personally. She was exhausted from battling inner conflicts she didn't want anyone else to see, perhaps fears around family expectations or buried grief. Her abrupt coldness was less about rejecting Anna and more about defending against feeling overwhelmed inside, a complex response often invisible until looked for closely. This means our first response should rarely be frustration or withdrawal but curiosity mixed with patience, a readiness to hold space for discomfort without trying to instantly fix it. Practically speaking, next time you catch yourself wanting to argue back or shut down emotionally because she seems inaccessible, try slowing down your reaction deliberately. Breathe deeply before answering and test out these gentle phrases. I'm noticing some distance between us right now. Do you want to talk about anything? Or, it seems like something might be bothering you. I'm here whenever. The power lies not so much in solving whatever problem is at hand immediately but in signaling acceptance even of difficult feelings, which paradoxically invites them out instead of pushing them further away. To build on that skill further, and this is where many stumble, we must let go of expecting quick clarity or neat resolutions every time shadow moments surface in conversation. Sometimes silence will stretch longer than comfortable. Sometimes emotions will seem contradictory or confusing. But holding presence through those moments builds trust stronger than any tidy explanation ever could. Here's an exercise you can practice alone anytime. Recall recent conversations where connection faltered unexpectedly, when words didn't land right or emotional distance crept in suddenly. Write down what happened objectively, what was said, what shifted. Then jot how you felt internally during those moments, not only toward her but within yourself too. Frustration? Fear? Confusion? Finally ask yourself, could any unspoken fears or vulnerabilities have been triggered beneath the surface? This reflection trains awareness toward subtle emotional currents shaping communication beyond mere words, a first step toward deeper empathy without assumptions or blame. I remember when Jacob, a software engineer from Austin, shared how he used this exercise after arguments with his wife Mia improved their dialogue dramatically within weeks. It made me stop blaming her mood swings and start wondering, what pain is trying to speak here? That shifted everything. It doesn't mean ignoring boundaries. We must always maintain respect for ourselves. But starting from curiosity opens doors closed tight by misunderstanding before. One last thing before closing this part. The irony is that while shadows make communication tricky, they also offer clues toward genuine intimacy if handled wisely. Those moments where defenses drop briefly or openings into true selves otherwise concealed behind social masks and politeness rules imposed since childhood, especially for women taught not to show anger directly. So approaching conversations aware of shadows helps us see beneath reactive behaviors, to glimpse fears needing reassurance rather than confrontation, and even strengths waiting quietly behind doubt. In that sense, talking with someone means dancing around these hidden elements instead of charging headlong into battle, or withdrawing altogether out of helplessness. And yes, sometimes it feels like walking blindfolded through unfamiliar rooms inside another person's mind because shadows tend to shift unpredictably depending on context and past wounds. But practicing patience mixed with gentle curiosity gradually turns guesswork into insight over time. Now, I'm curious. Do you recall moments when someone acted unexpectedly cold or defensive toward you? Maybe they seemed almost unrecognizable compared to their usual self? What did you do then? How did that affect your ability to connect afterward? If this feels relevant or frustratingly familiar, I'd love for you to share your story below so we can explore together how these subtle dynamics play out uniquely in real-life conversations. Because honestly, nobody gets taught this stuff growing up, but everyone stumbles through anyway. And since meaningful connection often starts by recognizing our own shadows too, that discomfort inside is triggered by another person, it might help next time you notice tension arises between you two. Pause briefly. Breathe. Consider whether something unseen is speaking louder than words ever could. That openness itself holds radical potential beyond casual chat, for transformation rooted not merely in fixing problems but embracing complexity with kindness both ways. Alright, let me know your thoughts. Meanwhile, I'll prepare some ideas on navigating further layers soon, because trust me, we've only scratched surface here. Sometimes, when you're trying to make sense of someone's unpredictable reactions, it feels like you're caught in a dance where the rhythm keeps changing without warning. You think you've got the steps down, then suddenly the music shifts, and you're scrambling to keep up. What if part of what's confusing isn't just her shadow side but also how certain expectations or roles influence your interaction? This leads us to an often overlooked yet crucial aspect: the interplay between projection and reality in conversations. Projection is like wearing tinted glasses that color everything we see. It's when we unconsciously attribute feelings, intentions, or traits onto someone else that actually belong to us, or fears we carry internally. Instead of noticing what she's truly expressing, we might be reacting to our own inner narratives about her. That can turn a simple conversation into a complex tangle where misunderstandings multiply because both parties aren't entirely seen as they are. I recall meeting Julian, a 42-year-old marketing consultant from Chicago, who described how his attempts to talk through issues with his wife would often spiral into arguments. He said, "I'd get frustrated because I thought she was ignoring my needs, but really I was just afraid she didn't care." Julian's fear wasn't necessarily based on facts but rooted in old wounds from feeling unseen as a child. What he projected onto his wife clouded the actual messages she was trying to communicate. Here's where it gets tricky. Projections aren't just about misreading others. They reveal parts of ourselves begging for acknowledgement. Recognizing when projection happens requires slowing down and gently questioning our initial reactions instead of acting on them immediately. A practical way to start this is by developing projection awareness during conversations. Next time you notice feeling irritated or misunderstood by her responses, pause and ask yourself, what might I be projecting onto her right now? Is this really about what she said or my own fears? Try saying internally, maybe this isn't just about her behavior but how I'm interpreting it through my own lens. This exercise helps create distance between emotion and reaction, enabling clearer perception of what's actually happening instead of what your mind assumes. You can even turn this into a journaling practice after significant interactions. Write down moments you felt triggered and explore possible projections underneath. Over time, this builds emotional intelligence that refines communication far beyond surface-level tactics. Interestingly, projection plays a huge role not only in conflict but also in attraction and misunderstanding in early stages of relationships, where idealizations clash with reality unexpectedly. Switching gears now. There's another element often hidden in difficult conversations: the pull of unmet needs beneath words unsaid or expressed indirectly. Sometimes people communicate less through explicit statements and more via emotional tone, body language, or subtle hints rooted in needs that feel unsafe to voice directly. Consider Laura, a 35-year-old nurse from Atlanta who shared how her partner's occasional silence during arguments left her feeling abandoned and anxious. She explained, "It wasn't just what he didn't say, it was the space his silence created. Like an echo chamber for all my fears." Laura later realized that beneath his quietness was a need for processing without pressure, a need she hadn't recognized initially because it looked like withdrawal rather than communication. This brings us to the idea of emotional resonance, the capacity to sense and respond empathetically not only to words but also to underlying feelings and unspoken needs during interaction. Learning to attune yourself to emotional resonance means practicing active listening coupled with sensitivity toward nonverbal cues, a skill sometimes lost amid busy modern lives dominated by screens and multitasking. Next time you find yourself face to face with someone whose reactions puzzle you, try tuning into more than their speech alone. Observe their posture changes, eye contact shifts, voice tone fluctuations. Notice pauses that carry weight beyond words. Reflect silently on possible unmet feelings behind those signals, and then validate gently without rushing toward solutions. It seems like something important is beneath what we're talking about. I want to understand better. Such validation acts as an emotional bridge, inviting deeper connection while reducing defensiveness on both sides. An exercise worth trying involves pairing mindful observation with curiosity during conversations. Before responding next time, count silently to 3 after they finish speaking. Yes, 3 whole seconds. Use those moments not for rehearsing rebuttals but simply absorbing their presence fully. Then respond starting with acknowledgement rather than correction. I hear you, that sounds tough. Doing this consistently shifts dynamics over time from transactional exchanges toward relational depth grounded in empathy. Now let me share a slightly unexpected example involving Steve, a 50-year-old firefighter from Denver who initially found emotional conversations intimidating. When his wife expressed frustration over household responsibilities one evening after work, Steve could feel tension rising inside but usually resorted to staying silent or diverting topics. After practicing emotional resonance techniques guided by therapy sessions focused on Jungian concepts, he began naming emotions aloud. I feel overwhelmed too, instead of avoiding them altogether. His wife responded by opening up more honestly about stressors previously masked by fatigue or irritation, leading not only to less conflict but stronger partnership resilience overall. That shift highlights how embracing emotional nuances rather than suppressing or ignoring them transforms communication profoundly, especially when shadows try to disrupt understanding. As much as projection awareness helps clarify perceptions externally, the ability to resonate emotionally taps into connecting at heart level despite differences or discomforts arising naturally between individuals. So here's something tangible for you. The next time conversation feels stuck or charged emotionally, try combining these 2 approaches. First, step back mentally. Ask about possible projections coloring your interpretation. Second step, lean in physically, emotionally. Seek out unspoken feelings through attentive presence. This dual practice cultivates patience toward both self and other, a foundation critical when engaging with someone whose shadow aspects emerge unpredictably because it invites curiosity over judgment continually. And if this feels challenging, it absolutely can be at first. That's perfectly normal since most people aren't trained in such nuanced interpersonal skills explicitly. We tend instead toward quick fixes or avoidance. However, small consistent efforts create ripple effects, making future encounters feel less like battlegrounds and more like opportunities for growth, even if imperfectly handled along the way. Speaking of imperfection reminds me of something essential before moving forward. There is no right way to navigate these complexities perfectly every time because human beings are inherently messy creatures wired for contradiction, including within ourselves. In fact, embracing that messiness without shame or frustration opens doors for forgiveness both inwardly and outwardly, which becomes critical later when exploring deeper psychological layers tied closely with identity and boundaries. Which leads us naturally into our third point. The vital role boundaries play amidst shadow dynamics in communication. Boundaries are not just rules imposed arbitrarily, they mark internal limits safeguarding our well-being while allowing authentic connection without losing oneself under another's influence or expectations. Especially when shadows surface strongly during conversations, the temptation might be either total withdrawal, I can't deal, or engulfment, I'll change everything so they don't get upset. Neither extreme helps build trust long-term. Instead, boundaries act as anchors maintaining integrity amid turbulent emotional waves often stirred up unknowingly by shadow parts seeking expression beyond usual limits. Remember Claire, a 31-year-old teacher from Vancouver who described being overwhelmed repeatedly by her boyfriend's sudden mood swings, leading her sometimes into anxious overcompensating behaviors, trying harder not to upset him. She admitted feeling trapped between wanting closeness desperately yet fearing losing herself completely in his unpredictable tides emotionally. Through therapy focused on identifying personal boundaries informed by Jungian ideas around self-other differentiation, Claire learned practical ways to say no respectfully while affirming care simultaneously. I want us close but I need space right now. Establishing such boundaries allowed dialogue shifts away from reactive chaos toward mutual respect, creating safer spaces where shadow material could surface without triggering defensive collapse immediately each time conflict arose later on naturally. So how do you start recognizing your own limits clearly within conversations when shadows get activated? One actionable tip is practicing boundary checks mid-interaction. Periodically tune into physical sensations signaling discomfort, tight chest, shallow breathing. Acknowledge those signals internally as clues indicating personal limits being approached. Voice your needs calmly even if briefly. Can we pause here? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Don't worry if it feels awkward initially. That's normal since many haven't developed habits around clear boundary setting, especially under stress. But each attempt strengthens self-awareness muscles crucial for sustainable communication balance long term. Here's an exercise tailored for this purpose. Next time emotions surge unexpectedly during talking, pause briefly, even silently count 1-2. Identify at least one physical feeling related to discomfort, headache, knot in stomach. Say out loud, or mentally, what you need momentarily. I need a minute, can we slow down? Observe how expressing boundaries impacts atmosphere subtly yet powerfully, whether met with resistance or relief. Practicing such micro-assertions supports healthier exchanges, preventing escalation fueled by shadow confusion masked under vague frustrations common when limits go unspoken until breaking point arrives suddenly, otherwise later damaging trust deeply instead of building it gradually through patience combined with clear honest expression upfront consistently over time. To wrap these points together, it turns out communicating effectively through dark terrain isn't about controlling outcomes perfectly but learning fluidity between deep listening inside yourself plus respectful honesty outside plus compassionate curiosity inwardly plus empathic presence outwardly all at once. Which admittedly sounds like juggling flaming torches blindfolded sometimes. But real progress comes acknowledging human imperfection while daring enough not only to show up despite it, but also invite others doing same messy dance alongside willingly enough to occasionally stumbling without shame because each stumble reveals new insight peeling off layers previously hidden guarding authentic connection steadily nevertheless incrementally evolving day after day no matter history burden carried deep inside psyche before meeting face to face again next time ready maybe slightly more awake than last encounter already. I wonder now, how do you typically handle moments when conversation feels overwhelming? Do you tend toward retreat silently? Or push through quickly hoping tension dissolves? What would happen if instead curiosity mixed lightly with boundary setting became your default toolkit? Feel free sharing below. That kind of honest exchange enriches everyone navigating complicated human landscapes together somehow perfectly anyway. And since exploring these themes often stirs many questions, I have some resources available diving further into boundary setting practices infused with psychological insights if interested later on. You'll find links gently placed alongside this content for easy reference whenever curiosity strikes deeper beyond casual chat zones. For now though, let those ideas settle quietly inside until next steps unfold organically. As they always do eventually once we stop rushing answers needing space nurturing complexity patiently instead. Alright. I'm eager hearing your reflections. Meanwhile stay tuned. I'm preparing more insights unpacking how these patterns weave intricately within different relationship types soon coming up next. There's a particular kind of silence that speaks louder than words. One that carries a weight not just of what's left unsaid, but of what's too complex, raw, or even taboo to voice openly. This silence isn't merely empty space. It's a living presence shaping every interaction when someone's inner world feels too fractured or vulnerable to share directly. Our final point explores the powerful role of emotional containment and how learning to hold that heavy silence without rushing to fill or fix it can transform difficult conversations with the women in our lives profoundly. Take Nadia, a 38-year-old playwright living in Seattle, whose relationship with her mother had always been punctuated by unspoken tensions. Nadia described moments when her mother would suddenly go quiet during family gatherings, not out of anger per se, but because certain feelings, grief, regret, shame, were so buried they hovered invisibly beneath the surface like unseen storms. Nadia confessed that early on she found these silences unsettling and often tried to break them with jokes or rapid chatter, fearing something was wrong or lost forever. But over time, guided by therapy rooted in Jungian ideas about accepting unconscious material gently rather than evading it, Nadia learned a different approach. Instead of rushing to fill the silent spaces, she began practicing emotional containment. Sitting with those silences openly but calmly, offering presence without pressure. She might say softly, "I'm here if you want to share anything later," then simply be present alongside her mother without expectation. This subtle shift created room for trust where previously tension reigned. It let shadows breathe without suffocating them prematurely. Emotional containment isn't passive ignoring. It's an active holding that requires patience and courage because it means tolerating discomfort while resisting the urge to control outcomes immediately. Here's an exercise inspired by this concept. Next time you notice a heavy silence during conversation, don't jump in with words right away. Instead, close your eyes briefly if possible. Take 3 slow breaths focusing solely on staying grounded. Offer internally, or aloud if appropriate, something simple like, "It's okay not to have all the answers right now." Resist the temptation to change subject or explain away the quiet. Observe how both you and the other person feel as you practice this space holding. Over repeated attempts, this cultivates resilience toward ambiguity, a crucial skill when dealing with shadow material that resists neat categorization or quick fixes. Nadia's story highlights how allowing silence its own voice paradoxically opens pathways for deeper communication beyond typical conversational patterns conditioned by cultural impatience or fear of vulnerability. And yes, it can feel uncomfortable at times because modern culture prizes constant connection through noise and distraction. But real intimacy often thrives precisely in moments where silence is embraced rather than avoided. So here we are at a crossroads where understanding shadows in communication becomes less about mastery and more about mindful coexistence with complexity inside another person, and ourselves. That brings me to something important before wrapping up. Sometimes we want clear maps for navigating tricky emotional terrain, blueprints guaranteeing success every time. But people aren't mechanical puzzles solved by formulas. They're fluid beings shaped by history, hopes, wounds, and shadow parts, both protective and paradoxically enlightening. Speaking honestly, that unpredictability is where true growth lies if we resist fleeing from discomfort. Rather than fearing shadow moments as threats, what if we saw them instead as invitations? Invitations into depth and authenticity rarely accessed through polite small talk alone? When we accept that her dark side, her fears, resistances, contradictions, is not an enemy but part of her wholeness waiting quietly for recognition, our conversations transform from battlefields into dance floors where imperfect moves still create meaning together. Now imagine shifting one tough conversation into such a dance, a place where judgment softens because curiosity takes center stage, where silence held gently becomes fertile soil for trust rather than barren land forcing escape, where boundaries set clearly protect both hearts instead of barricading closeness, where projections dissolve because self-awareness lights up internal fog. This isn't some romantic ideal. It happens quietly every day between people brave enough to meet each other wholly, even when shadows peek unexpectedly from corners thought long sealed shut. If that feels like tall order, it is. And also deeply human. You don't need all answers today or perfect strategies ready to use instantly. Small acts matter. Pausing before responding. Asking gentle questions. Naming feelings aloud. Daring brief vulnerability. Setting limits kindly. Sitting through uncomfortable silences. All these weave threads knitting fragmented parts of relationship tapestry stronger over time despite inevitable flaws and setbacks. I recall one last vignette from Lena, a photographer in New York City who shared how after years struggling with her partner's erratic moods she started journaling their interactions, focusing on what I notice inside myself. She wrote about frustration turning into curiosity, which then led her to recognize patterns linked not only to his shadow but hers too, including fears she hadn't dared face before about being unlovable at core. That self-reflection allowed space for new conversations grounded less in blame and more in mutual discovery. A breakthrough slowly yet surely shifting their connection toward greater honesty instead of distance. So here lies the beautiful paradox. True dialogue about shadow sides demands openness mixed equally with boundaries. Curiosity balanced alongside patience. Presence paired with respectful distance. Acknowledging imperfection while striving sincerely. This delicate balance mirrors life itself. Not tidy but endlessly rich despite uncertainty. It reminds me now how much human communication is less about flawless execution and more akin to jazz improvisation. Unpredictable rhythms requiring listening deeply, to self, other, moment, and responding spontaneously though imperfectly, nonetheless creating harmony fleeting yet meaningful enough to linger long after music fades. And since we're already diving deep here, I invite you simply reflect quietly now on what parts of yourself might be waiting patiently behind your own conversational shadows. The fears hesitating beneath words not spoken yet. The vulnerabilities nudging softly beneath defenses built over time. What happens if instead of pushing those parts away, you welcome them gently as messengers bringing truth otherwise missed? That kind invitation changes everything subtly but profoundly, because connection starts not outside in control, but inside out through acceptance first. Before signing off today, I want this final thought to linger. Our ability to talk with someone truly emerges when we dare embrace all their layers, including those darker edges society prefers hidden, as essential facets shaping who they are uniquely alive in world alongside us. And it asks us likewise courageously welcome our own shadows as companions, not curses, on this shared journey toward deeper understanding that no algorithm or quick fix can replace. It's messy, it's imperfect, sometimes exhausting, even painful, but also radically freeing beyond measure once accepted, because it reveals humanity stripped bare, flawed yet whole, reaching through complexity toward genuine belonging beyond superficial masks worn habitually everywhere else daily. So next time you face silence thick with unsaid things, notice projection blurring lines between feelings, sense unmet needs whispering softly beneath words chosen, feel boundaries trembling inviting expression, remember emotional containment waiting patiently untouched. Pause. Breathe. Lean softly into unknown spaces together without fear. Because there, in that shared vulnerability, you glimpse possibility rare and precious enough for lasting transformation, far richer than any scripted dialogue ever dreamed. Thanks for walking this path thoughtfully today. If these reflections sparked anything meaningful for you, please drop your thoughts below, because authentic conversation grows richer amid real stories lived beyond theory alone. Remember, we're all navigating shadows, whether speaking them aloud or carrying quietly inside. Your willingness simply shows up willing matters most already. And maybe somehow shifts ripples, subtly changing inner worlds, quietly altering outer ones, little by little becoming something unexpected yet profoundly human after all. Until next time, keep listening deeply, both outward and inward, bravely, imperfectly, beautifully yourself. The last word? Connection lives precisely where light never dared tread alone, but needs courage enough walk beside shadows hand in hand nonetheless.